Okay, hello everyone, ciao, and welcome to our roofing masterclass today. I'm Peggy West, I'm your organizer, and I want to cover a couple things before we get started. You know, we're coming into hurricane season. I just want to say that I hope everybody takes preparation, precautions, and everything. Today, we're going to learn hopefully some tips and things about uh, the roofing and to be ahead of the roofing issues, inspections, and so on. Uh, I also want you to be prepared for the class. So if you have questions, put your questions into the Q&A, not the chat. We are recording the questions, not the chat. So if we don't get to all the questions, that's the reason why that's important is because this way the speaker can get back to you. Okay, before we do anything further, also for the CAMs, this is a CEU credit. It'll either be an operations or an elective, depending on what you have on your DBPR record. And that will all be posted within about 10 days. We have quite a few people registered and still getting on. We had 100, almost 200 people, 195 actually registered before we started this. So thank you so much for joining us today. I want to introduce our sponsors now. First, I'm going to start with what I always say, the wind beneath my wings is Vinteum software. We have Katie Basford on. She is the National Account Executive. And Katie, tell us about yourself and what does Vinteum do for condominiums and homeowner associations?
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, Peggy. So Vinteum provides condo and HOA management software. So this covers your public-facing website. This covers your private resident portal. It's going to help you stay compliant with all of those changing laws in Florida around community associations and what they need to have available online. And it's also going to help you streamline transparency, communication within your association. So if that sounds like it may be a good fit for you, please feel free to reach out. We do personalized demos so we can find the best feature set for your community. So would love to get connected. And thank you so much, Peggy.
Awesome. So they're an international company, everyone. They have lots of experience. If you need a website, you need to be compliant, or you want to update your website, take a look at a free demo that they give, and we can do it. They can do it by appointment. Either reach out to Katie or reach out to myself. Okay, this is not going to be any particular order as I had on the agenda, guys, but let's go on and move down. Right below you is Dylan Pena. He is owner's son of PD Concrete. Can you tell us what's going on with concrete in your world?
Thank you, Peggy, for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dylan. I'm a business developer here at PD Concrete. We're proud to be a trusted name in structural restoration for serving South Florida for over 20 years. At PD Concrete, we specialize in post-tension cable repair, waterproofing, balcony and concrete restoration. We also assist with the 40, 50, 60-year recertification process so we can assess that your building and your property is safe and compliant. We also offer compliant complimentary walkthroughs to assess your building's needs, and we provide performance bonds and a 5-year warranty. But yeah,
Awesome.
we serve the Tri-County area in South Florida. We have with an office in Aventura and Palm Beach. Thank you, Peggy.
Awesome. You're welcome. Awesome. I didn't know about those offices. Okay, great. Next, I want to introduce Brooke Cavender. She's with Southwest Elevator. Brooke, tell us about yourself, what you're doing for associations in Florida.
Awesome. Thanks, Peggy. Yeah, I'm Brooke Cavender with Southwest Elevator. We are a family-owned and operated union elevator company. I'm actually the 4th generation stepping into the company, so we've been around quite some decades here. We're based out of Dallas, but we have an office here in Fort Lauderdale that handles all the tri-counties. We also have an office in Orlando. We go over to Naples, and we are expanding to Tampa soon. So if you have needs there, we will also be there. We are full service shop. So maintenance, repair, or modernization, anything that you would need for your elevators, we can provide. I will put my info in the chat. And if you need a second opinion or anything like that, we're always happy to help. So just reach out. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We have a lot of condos and a lot of elevators. So stay safe, everyone, especially with the hurricanes coming, I worry about the condos with the elevators, especially the ones that are up on the upper floors. Next, I want to introduce Bob Aleka. Bob is the Vice President of Communities for Faster IO. Bob, tell us about yourself. What are you doing? I know you're getting momentum. And
Well, good
what's going on?
afternoon, Peggy. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for that, Peggy. Faster IO has been building, providing, and maintaining fiber optic infrastructures for over 20 years for most of all the service providers. We provide internet and streaming TV. Streaming TV you can take with you, literally everything, including the locals. Change your address and your locals will follow you. Internet speeds are all symmetrical, so whatever you get down, you get up, and it's also powered by our data center. We have 4 data centers here in Deerfield, Miami, Chicago, and Atlanta. And so all of that fiber comes back to the data centers and it's backed up, as well as we back up your head end on site. So if you lose electric, your head end is still live on site. So if you are a community that's 2 years or less with an agreement, give me a call. If you're a small community with maybe 15 units, 20 units, that's good for us as well. So enjoy the class, and I look forward. I'll put my information in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, now I want to introduce Ashley Leonardo from Munyon Painting. She's out of Tampa or the West Coast area. They have a team all over the state. Tell us about yourself, Ashley, and what are you guys doing at Munyon?
Of course. Thanks, Peggy. So for those of you who don't know us, we're Florida's top choice painting contractor, and we handle all apartment, condo, HOA, commercial, residential, exterior or interior painting needs. We've got you covered there. We have been in business for 74 years. So that's since 1951. And we do cover the entire state of Florida. So some of you might be familiar with Shelley Rovner over on the East Coast. I'm over here in our headquarters in Largo on the Tampa side. So we do cover the whole state. So we got pops in Orlando, Fort Myers, West Palm, over here in Tampa and North. For those of you local to the Tampa Bay area, kind of where I'm at, we do have an in-house color and design studio. So we have partnered with kind of all of our paint providers, Sherwin, Behr, just all the good stuff, just to have all these colors on site for you guys with a big showroom of pieces from other suppliers. And we do have offices here for board meetings to be held here, because we were running into a lot of board meetings at Panera Bread and stuff like that. Maybe they don't have the location to accommodate their board meetings. So we have that as well. And lastly is our client care center. So you don't have to be on this coast to utilize that. So that's any clients we have is through our website. If you have a job with us, you can use your login info, residents, board members, etc. They can get live updates on their properties. And we are licensed GC. So if you guys need anything, painting, general contracting, stuff like that, I'll put my info in the chat. And without further ado, thank you, Peggy.
You're welcome. Thank you. You guys got it covered. Okay, budget time's coming, so please keep all of these great sponsors in mind. They've got experience and they're professional. I next want to introduce a few that are not on before we go into the class. I've got COA Solutions, who is an insurance broker. We have Daniel Baum. He's the CEO and founder. I also want to introduce City Quiet Windows and Doors. Ben Friedman, he's the president of the company, very active directly with his customers. Very good source for hurricane windows. We have Dawn Miller from the Paving Lady. Again, you've got your budgets coming up. Please consider Dawn and her team over there. And then I also have Hafer Company. Hafer is a large CPA service and audit service, and they are 4 offices around the state of Florida as well. And with that, I'm going to suggest you reach out to Nicole Johnson, and all of these sponsors for today invited you, and we appreciate you joining in our webinar, and they will be on the sponsor sheet. So with that, I'm going to go into introducing Jamie Gelfand. She is VP and Regional Sales Officer for First Citizens Bank and today's moderator. Jamie, tell us about yourself. What's the bank doing in preparation for the associations?
Thanks, Peggy. Good afternoon, everybody. As Peggy said, I'm Jamie Gelfand. I work in the Community Association Banking Division at First Citizens Bank. First Citizens is a 125-year-old top 20 bank. In the CAB division, we provide lockbox and loans and reserve specialist for management companies and large self-managed associations. As you're working on any of your milestone requirements or any upgrades to your property authorized under the declaration of the association, we have 2 loan types that we would be able to assist you with. I'll put my information in the chat, and I hope you enjoyed today's class.
Okay, we'll go right into the introduction of Diana Litt. She is the Senior Marketing Director now. Congratulations with that new title. And Diana, take it away. Introduce your speaker from your company, Jordan Litt, please. Are you muted, Diana?
Yeah, sorry, we had a little bit of like connection problems. How do you say? Thank you so much, Peggy. Thank you everyone for being here today for our class. I'm Diana Litt, the Director of Business Development here at Best Roofing. If you don't know about us, Best Roofing has been in business for over 47 years. And we have done everything in roofing from like, repairs, maintenance program, re-roof recovery. We're now covering single family houses to high rises, warehouses, commercial buildings, apartments, everything. And we can help you with whatever you need. We are covering east and west coast of Florida. And if you need anything, or if you have a question or you need an inspection, my information is in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to help you. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. Today, we're presenting Roofing Masterclass. It's 1 hour of OPP credit. And without further ado, let me introduce to you Jordan Litt, the Director or Service Sales here at Best Roofing. Have a wonderful class.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I just get a thumbs up? Can everyone hear me? Good to go? All right. All right. So today we're going to be doing the master class. I know that I believe we talked about it on the front end. If there are any questions, moderator, go ahead and just shout them out just so that we can talk about them maybe while we're on the subject. And then, of course, at the end, if anyone has any additional questions or kind of want to go through anything again, let me know. So talk about the agenda today. So tell you a little bit about myself, the recap, the different types of decks, permits, codes, NOAs, insulation, roofing systems, the Senate Bill 4D and 2D, which I'm sure a lot of you out there are familiar with at this point, the restoration systems that are available, the life cycle of a roof, and then any questions, comments at the end. So my name is Jordan Litt. I'm the Director of Service Sales. A little background, I started here working on an actual tear-off crew, became a site supervisor, moved from that to the construction management side and actually replaced some of the roofs down from our Miami office. From there, moved over to the sales department, managed the sales department, and now I'm the Director of Service Sales. So let's get into it a little bit. And this is normally where I'd like to see all your hands. Everyone has some roofing issues that they want to call us about, right? And I'm sure a lot of you out there have replaced your roofs. And if you haven't, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. There's 2 main types of roofing that typically it's going to fall under. Steep sloped or pitched, that's your single family homes, high rises, townhouses, stuff like that, and your low slope, or what we also call flat roofs. So most of the pitched roofing systems that we see, especially down here in South Florida, although there are a few others, is going to be your tile, shingle, or metal. That's typically the ones that we see. On the low slope side, there's the single ply, modified bitumen, and the built-up roof systems. Now, this is the part where I think, especially from a rudimentary perspective, this is where you can truly understand the most, and that is that for us to accurately give you a price, to understand how we want to make a repair, we truly have to understand what the existing roof deck is and what the existing composition of the roof is. So roof decks are basically always where we want to start. And there's 6 types of functional decks. So we have wood decks, steel decks, lightweight concrete, which is an interesting one because typically that can go over your steel decks or your structural concrete. But with certain older types of steel decks, it's actually a structural component of the deck. We have Tectum decks, structural concrete, and gypsum. So this is a great kind of just overview to show you and indicate just different parts of a wood deck. Typically, based on certain structures, you're going to be able to tell typically what that deck would be just based on what that structure is. Now, of course, there are exceptions to that rule, but typically a single family home with a pitched roof, you're going to see that it has typically some plywood sheathing or tongue and groove, wood deck, townhouses, stuff like that. Of course, you know, certain shopping centers, typically those are going to be metal decks, you know, high-rise condos, always going to be structural concrete. But here you can see basically the sheathing and also the structural joists that are underneath it. You can see like the attic view of the structural joists from the interior, which support the sheathing. Steel decks are, like I said, something that you're typically going to see on like large warehouses, and that is and large shopping plazas, and that is because of the fact that they're economical, they're easy to install, and the weight requirement isn't to a point that you would need or that you can install it there and makes it nice and easy. B decking now for all new construction per code is the required type of deck. We see in a lot of these older installations, as I mentioned earlier, where lightweight concrete is actually a component of the structural deck, which would be something like your 9/16 roll form decking. Typically, if we see that, we know it's an older building. And if for whatever reason a deck replacement was required based on either the structural integrity not being there or failing a fastener pull test, we would have to remove that deck and install a 22 gauge B decking. So with the steel decks, there's typically vented and non-vented. There's benefits to both. Typically, you see the non-vented out there, although in certain instances we have seen the vented. The non-vented is going to be a little bit more difficult to essentially diagnose where a leak could be coming from compared to the vented. And there are some benefits to both, but typically you're going to see a little bit less deterioration from the deck with the vented decking because it can allow some of that moisture to escape the system quicker than a non-vented system. So there's pros and cons to both sides of the steel decks. The lightweight concrete, like I said, is typically going to be used for one as a minor insulating factor, but also typically to provide positive drainage and slope. If it's not already built into the deck structurally, it's going to be installed over the deck so that we can actually manipulate the water towards the drains and achieve positive drainage. So the name of the game is always to get the water off of the roof. The lightweight is typically how you can do that. It's a little bit more of an upfront cost compared to the tapered insulation systems that are out there. But the benefit of a lightweight concrete installation is, if it's done correctly, is that the next time you actually go to replace that roof, you do not have to remove the lightweight. You can actually leave it there, skin off the membrane, and install a new roof over that, unlike a tapered insulation system that would be required to remove down to the deck. So there's, like I said, pros and cons and upfront costs that come with the lightweight, but it also does provide a specific R value as well. So this is actually a photo. You can see it being installed. Before it's installed, there's typically like a vapor barrier installed to make sure that none of that lightweight can actually enter the building as well. Here's a photo of us doing a Broward Health, and this is actually us doing the install here. And here's an overview prior to any membrane being installed, what the lightweight looks like as it was installed on the roof. So this is a great example of what can happen when that lightweight does fail. There is some engineering on the front end that can be performed to determine that, but sometimes in what we call unforeseen conditions, sometimes we can't determine that until we actually get into the tear-off component of the replacement. So here you can see, and some of those reasons could be just simply based on age. It could be based on how the lightweight was mixed and installed originally. It can be from expansion and contraction over long periods of time. And it could also be due to moisture or water intrusion occurring over a long period of time too. So let's show you this. And you can see here the membrane that doesn't want to detach from the lightweight, and how it's all chunking up like that because it's deteriorating as we're trying to remove the membrane above it. Well, keep going a little bit more on this. More. So you can see there the lightweight actually attached to the underside of the membrane. Now, in that instance, there's two ways that basically we can skin the cat. One is if it is an appropriate decking, we can remove the lightweight and either replace it with new lightweight or tapered insulation, or flat technically. Or we, depending on the type of deck, if it is outdated per the NOAs, we would have to remove the decking and replace that as well, in which case, depending on what we want to go back with, we could then. But typically that might be a stoppage of work, and we'd have to go back and discuss what the next steps would be. So here's another case study. So this is what the roof looked like prior to us mobilizing, getting on site. As we started to tear off, the deck was actually deteriorated. And that can also be tricky too, because in a lot of instances, we'll see businesses and different types of property management and stuff like that, where tenants will actually paint the underside of the deck. So we can't actually tell always how deteriorated the deck is from the underside. But when we go to actually tear it off from the top side, we could actually see that the deck has gone beyond its useful life. And here you can see this is actually a situation where we were tearing off and the roof did actually collapse in because the deck was in such disrepair. So what we'll do there is in that top middle photo, we'll identify the area that needs to be removed, and we'll basically square it off, which you see in the top right corner, and remove that deteriorated decking. Typically, we're going to span at least 3 joists. The B decking comes in 3 by 20 foot pieces. So what we're doing there in the bottom right corner is actually installing the new decking. On the right side of the photo, you see we're basically marking each piece. So if there is a change order required, we have the documentation in place, which is important just to make sure with our clients that we're showing them exactly how many pieces we used and on what day, so that we can make sure that everyone has the proper documentation required. From there, you see the middle photo of us laying the insulation. Top right photo, now we've installed the cover board and the Rhino Bond plates and fasteners. The bottom middle photo actually shows the Rhino Bond installation with the induction welding and the magnets. And then you see in the bottom right side, the photo of basically that area completed with the new single ply membrane installed. So the next one is structural concrete. This is typically going to, go ahead.
Before you move on, I have a couple questions from the audience.
Sure.
So the first question, when we replace our condo's TPO flat roof, will we have to upgrade to hurricane stands for the rooftop ACs? Currently, they are on a raised concrete slab overlaid with lumber in which AC units are screwed into.
Okay, great question. And the broader answer to that is I'd have to probably see a better photos, but it sounds like you have basically ACs on a sleeper, which is kind of what we call when they lay pieces of wood across a concrete. There is in the code, in chapter 15 of the code, the size of the AC, meaning the width of the AC, will determine the height requirement from the bottom of the stand to your finished roof. But here's an even broader answer to your question. Anything, when the roof is replaced, anything, any other component of that is not up to code, meaning your mechanical, electrical work, will also need to be brought up to code. Typically, I believe if the AC is 24 inches or less, it's 14 inches of clearance from the bottom of the AC stand to the top of the finished roof. If it's, I believe, 24 to 36 inches, it's 18 inches, and based on the size, it increases from there.
Okay, great. Next question. Is the silicone roof guaranteed for 20 years, acceptable for the reserve and milestone as added life to the roof?
Okay, that is also a great question because it enlightens something that I feel very passionately about. I would be very careful with that, and I would not install. I don't believe it would, and the reason is that a silicone coating is not a roof replacement. And if the insurance and the SIR study that you're doing are required to understand when that roof needs to be replaced, I do not believe that they would accept, if your roof needs to be replaced in 5 years, that a 10-year coating system will then add 15 years to that roof. Remember, a silicone coating is a topical application over your existing roof system. If you have a D or an F rated roof, what we consider with our internal grading system, and you install a coating over that, you still have a D or an F roof with a nice new coating over it. We have seen in certain instances, buildings go to their insurance companies, ask if a coating will be accepted, and they have been told no. So I would be very careful with that. And I am very conservative when it comes to the concept of coating an existing roof. I typically find the right time to coat a roof would be somewhere in that 10 to 15 year range of an existing roof to extend the life. But you have to be very careful, and I would make sure anything that you do, you have in writing from the people that would be extending your policies.
Okay, great. And then I have one more question before you move on,
Sure.
which I believe Diana would like to answer. Can the roofer discuss the importance of the attic ventilation of a single-family house to workmanship warranty?
Wow, that's a good question. Now, I can tell you this. It's a delicate balance, and there's an ecosystem involved of having the correct amount of inflow and outflow to your ventilation. So there's some calculations we can do, but typically, just like any large roof replacement, right? Say for a condo, warehouse, we have to work with the existing conditions. And typically we're going to install to the best of our capabilities. Now, I would say if that was a desire on the front end to increase, whether there was an intake or the outflow, that would be something that needs to be discussed on the front end. But we haven't typically run into too many situations where that is coming up as a warrantable item. I can say that at least.
Well, thank you, Jordan, for answering those. For everyone else on the session today, if you do have additional questions, if you would please put them in the Q&A so that I can get them addressed live by Jordan throughout the session. Thanks.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so main two types.
Wait, sorry, Peggy has a question or comment.
Sure.
I just see a lot of managers putting their license number into the chat or the question. I can't remember which ones, but when you register, managers, you put your number onto the registration. So you don't need to add your license number. That's all I want to say.
Okay. All right. So typical different types of concrete decks. You can't just see just above the videoing here, but we have over here a twin T deck. There's also hollow core slabs. I will tell you this, a fully adhered roofing system over a concrete deck is typically going to be the best system that can be installed as far as your negative uplift pressures. So and we'll get into the different forms of attachment shortly, a little bit later in the program. But I can tell you when we install a fully adhered system over a concrete deck, that's typically going to have the best chance to stay attached during either a high wind event or a hurricane. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Tectum decks Typically, you're going to see these in definitely on older builds, but also you'll see these in gymnasiums. You'll also see these in churches as well. This is what we call cementitious wood fiber. I call it spaghetti because it looks like compressed spaghetti. So you'll see that as well. Gypsum decks, another indication that the building would probably be older. We don't typically see this being installed on new construction anymore, but introduced as early as the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And it does have a fire retardant quality to it, which is what it's used. So, but typically when we're tearing this off, which we still do see, especially down here in South Florida, especially with a lot of these older buildings down in Miami and in Miami Beach, but we don't see these on new builds anymore. So here's the quick recap. Our 6 different types of deck. We have the wood deck, steel deck, structural concrete, Tectum, and gypsum. Now the lightweight concrete, as I said, you could see that over your structural concrete. You could also see that over your steel deck. And there's different forms of attachment based on what type of deck is underneath that lightweight. So that is one that is kind of multifunctional and can be used in different applications. And it's a great product when used correctly. So,
Jordan, before you
Sure.
move on, I do have
Sure.
one additional question. What will be recommended roofing system over a wood deck, townhouse flat roofs, mostly with some shingle areas?
Okay, so the broader context or broader answer to that is that, and this applies to not only the specifics of that, but what we are always going to do in the industry is take a look at what your building is being used for, whether it's a townhouse, warehouse, industrial complex, mall, restaurant, high-rise condo, and we are going to try to tailor one, if not multiple options at different price points for what we think would best fit your structure, right? So for a townhouse that is a wood deck that's flat, we're probably going to want to put a Class A fire rating on that, which would be like a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch cover board, which is made of gypsum. Depending on whether that building is structurally sloped or not. If it's flat and it has some structural slope, then we could add some insulation there, but it's going to be mechanically attached, and I'd probably go with a Rhino Bond system. If it's dead flat, ideally I'd like to add a tapered insulation package on top of that to make sure that I can manipulate the water to actually get off the roof. We're going to talk a little bit more about different types of membrane and why I'm a large proponent of single plies and TPOs like that, rather than modified bitumen, which you'll see a lot of. And that's because of I would say the durability, but more even so the efficiency of that product, which we'll get into in a little bit. But to answer your question, I would definitely put a Class A fire rating with 1/4 inch cover board or 1/2 inch, tapered insulation if required, mechanically attached with a Rhino Bond system and a single ply TPO.
Thank you. And one more before you move on. Oh,
Sure.
maybe. In a single family home, asking if a roof has the entire roof added peel and stick in 20+ years when it gets replaced, I was told that the whole roof decking needs to be replaced. True or not true?
So I don't believe now that's interesting because we have recently gone through some code changes in the state of Florida. So the FBC, which gets updated, I believe, every 2 to 3 years, has recently made a big change to the code where prior you would probably put something like a 30-pound nails and tin tag down and then put a peel and stick under a waterproofing secondary underlayment on top of that, and then your tile roof system. They have gone away with the 30-pound nail and tin tag and said we can go direct to deck. So I believe there are instances in which you will not have to replace the deck, in which case you would potentially have to install either a new layer directly over that or mechanically fasten a new base sheet over that and then install a peel and stick system after that. But I don't believe in every instance you have to completely replace the the structural deck every time that you replace the roof, but I believe after 2 times you might have to.
Great. Last question before you move on.
Sure.
About how long does it take between inspection, estimate, permitting, installation, once a roof company is hired?
Great question. So a little bit of these timelines will depend on, let's say, the type of building, whether it's a single family home, entire shopping mall. So some of that, and the other would be the municipality that you are located in, because every municipality is a little bit different. So on the front end, the way we do things here at Best Roofing, the first thing we would do would be to coordinate what's called a takeoff, which is where we're going to come out and physically measure every inch of your roof, document, understand the logistics required to do the job, take core samples, understand what the existing components of the roof are, because that's very important to understand what we would install next. We're also going to we also need to see what type of what type of deck it is, because the deck will always dictate what the installation for attachment would be. From there, we would bring that back to our offices. If it's more on the complex side, we would push that through our estimating department, get back and put and tailor a system to you. If it's a single family home, I have ways that we measure the roof, take logistical photos, understand what type of system you want to go back with, whether it's shingle tile or metal, and we can typically have a quote back to you within a couple days. On the more complex projects that require the estimating department, it would take a little bit longer. Once you've actually seen the proposal, accepted the proposal, that's when we actually have to submit all the documents to the city. And that is one period where it can fluctuate depending on size, complexity of the project. And we kind of all have to sit on our hands at that point and wait for them to come back with any comments, any additional engineering that may be required at that point. But once we've physically gotten on site and mobilized, once again, all this depends on the size of the project. Single family home can, be a couple days typically, and the inspections are actually what slow us down when it comes to something like that. The larger the project, the longer it will actually take for us to complete. So for, I would say, a single family home, once we're on site a couple days, a project of a much larger stature, like a shopping mall or a high-rise condo, where the logistics are actually the most challenging aspect of the project, it could take a little bit longer. So it really does matter about the specific instances of your project, but typically we're going to lay out a timeline for you on the front end and communicate with you throughout that entire process. So you understand kind of what that timeline looks like. But there are a few parts of that which we cannot control, like the actual part where we submit to the city and the weather, that we have to kind of work around so that we can complete the project as quickly as possible.
And will you be in your presentation discussing solar panels at all? Are they being considered for condos? Will you have any information on this topic?
No, there's nothing in this masterclass about solar. I can tell you there are certainly some companies out there that have kind of bolted that on to their business model. We have not to this point. We do. I'm working on a very high-end single-family home currently, where they have engaged a solar project to be involved, and we are coordinating and working together to complete that. But no, we don't have anything in here. If there is a situation in which you are considering installing solar, please make sure that you are notifying and having that conversation not only with them, but with your roofing contractor as well, because more often than not, we will have to be involved in the installation. And it can be a bit cumbersome as far as if there are any issues down the road and having to get everyone involved to remove and make the repairs as needed. I haven't seen also many solar installations on high-rise condos and stuff like that. Typically, it's been on much larger kind of industrial type buildings. We have a very large mall down here that has them all over the place, but it's more on like the flat roof applications that you're going to see them, and not these high-rise on the coast type buildings.
Thanks, Jordan. That's it for now. You can go back to
Sure.
the types of insulation.
There we go. So there's 4 types of insulation. There's polyisocyanurate, lightweight concrete, which we say we have 4 here, but really 5, right? Expanded polystyrene, which is EPS, the extruded polystyrene, XPS, which don't really see too often, and perlite wood fiber, more affectionately referenced as brown board. Now, everything that we basically propose here at Best Roofing, we're only typically using polyiso as far as an insulation. Lightweight, of course. Expanded polystyrene is part of what can be used in the lightweight concrete installation. Extruded, I don't think I've ever seen us put a bid out using that. And the perlite and wood fiber is something you're going to see more on the lower tiered applications. It's not something we even use. I would recommend anytime you see that in a bid to where it's not a direction I would ever point you in. It's a lower quality. It has a lower R value, which we'll talk about, which is thermoresistance. And when water hits it, it's just like a sponge and it's going to hold that moisture, which is not going to do you any favors in the long run. So back in the early 70s, there was never really insulation installed on the tops of roofs. And when this energy crisis became a much larger issue, they started looking at ways they could actually, instead of using less gas and oil, but how they could do that by properly insulating the buildings. So it became a situation where they started to install insulating products on the roof, and we saw a much high, and that actually helped the roofing systems that were installed at that time actually last a little bit longer as well. So it was really a movement to try to lower or reduce the energy consumption at that point. And that since then has kind of grown into what we do today. And here's a visual example for you for the polyiso, or as we just call it in the industry, ISO, the EPS, the XPS, and the brown board. So depending on the way that we're going to attach, we either use 4x4 or 4x8s. Typically for your fully adhered systems, we're going to use 4x4. And for your mechanically attached systems, we can use either 4x4 or 4x8. So this is what I was talking about, and this is a really big component of why we choose to use only essentially the best and most efficient products in the market. And that is the polyiso. You can see that on the bottom there. And this is what's called an R value. So the thermoresistance value is how efficient that product is at basically keeping the thermodynamics, the heat out and the cool in, if you will, right? And when you're getting roof specifications, they might say, hey, well, I need an R19 or I need an R30. So what you could do to say, if you were trying to calculate how many inches of insulation you might need, is you can see here that basically you get 6.5 R per inch of polyiso. So if you needed, an R19 system, you know that you're going to need basically a 2.5 to 3 inch or a 3-inch minimum ISO installed on that project, right? And that's all about, like we said, reducing the consumption and adding efficiency to that building. So it's something that we're always looking to help, and this can affect the building as far as cooling goes, and in other aspects, right, with the expectancy of the life of the air conditioning units as well. So this is what I was referencing earlier. There's basically 2 methods of attachment when it comes to roofing. We're either going to glue it or we're going to screw it. So the fully adhered is basically low-rise foam and adhesive applications. Those are what we're going to use over a structural concrete deck. In certain instances, structural concrete with lightweight over it as well, gypsum and tectum. Over steel decks, we're going to do what's called mechanically attached or mechanically fastened systems. That's going to be over steel, wood, and lightweight concrete over steel decks. That's where we're going to mechanically attach screws and plates, which you can see on the right. So here's an example, a case study of tapered insulation being installed. And this is a great visual tool for you to see. When we say tapered insulation is basically puzzle pieces of different letters that we would install so that we can build what we call positive slope into your roof system. So this is an 1/8 inch tapered package, as you can see here. And it basically starts with a AA, ABC. Then we put a 2-inch filler underneath it and then go back with a AA, ABC again. And by doing that, we're adding what's called an 1/8 inch per foot. So for every 8 feet of roof, the roof will rise 1 inch. There's also 1/4 inch tapered packages as well. And both of those have a little bit of a different price point, but this is what we do if your roof is dead flat to achieve positive drainage and get that water moving and off your roof and through the drains as quickly as possible. So here it is. We're fully adhering the tapered insulation over the deck. And you can see here how there's multiple layers, and we actually have some Dens deck on top of that, which is your a gypsum board, which is also adding to the uplift pressures as well. And what you're seeing here is we put the low-rise foam adhesive down with that cart on the right, and then you see them basically weighing down the pieces of cover board with those buckets there, and that's because that low-rise foam wants to expand upwards. With that weight counterweighting on top of it, it then creates the low-rise foam to actually spread outward and actually get additional coverage, which is going to help with that uplift. So you can see here, that's what that tapered will actually look like. You see the drain on the left and how it tapers towards that drain. Your drain is always going to be the low point. And if you look on the right, you'll see those two drains. If you measure the distance between those two drains, if it's 50 feet, the 25-foot mark right in between is going to be your high point and your ridge. So your drains are always going to be the low point, and that's roofing 101 always. So we have some different type of flat roofing systems here. Built-up roofing diagram is not something that typically we install much of here. I find this to be one of the older and more antiquated ways of roofing. Newer technology, more efficient technology, and most importantly, cost-effective technology has come onto the market that has rendered this as something that I see on the service side quite often, because I'm typically looking at older roofs that need to be maintained and tried to extend into more useful life. But this isn't something that we're typically installing new anymore. And this is going to be like a hot mop system. So it's going to be typically on the lower end. You can see a lot of contractors that would install that. There are some advantages, but I would say more often than not, the disadvantages are going to grossly outweigh the advantages of your built-up roof system. And I'll explain why based on the other systems that are out there. Modified bitumen, if you do want to go with an asphaltic-based product, which also is part of that built-up system, you'd want to go with a modified bitumen. And here's why. There's multiple types of ways that they can be installed, and this is kind of the finished product right here. But the advantages are there's, for one, a multi-layer, what we call a redundancy that we can do by installing a 2, 3, or 4-ply system to that. It's also got a lot of different types of applications, and it's very versatile because say we're working on a hospital and we can't actually use an open torch and do a torch applied system. What we can do is actually install a cold applied system that doesn't require any open flame. So there's different methods that we can install it, which provide obviously an advantage there. And we can use it to repair other systems. Now, there are also some disadvantages to this, but our bread and butter here at Best Roofing is definitely the modified bitumen systems and the single ply options as well. This isn't a system that you should install on a flat roof. It cannot handle ponding water well. It's prone to blistering. There are seams typically every 36 to 39 inches with this. So there are reasons why I would say that it shouldn't be installed. And that's where on the front end, we're always going to try to diagnose what we think the best fit for your building is on the front end and tailor a system towards that. Now, the single ply, I would say even more so, is Best Roofing's bread and butter. I am a big proponent of this. When I was a construction manager for Best Roofing, 90% of the roofs we were tearing off were the built up and modified bitumen roofs, and 90% of the roofs we were installing were the single ply roof systems. And there's a multitude of different ones that can be installed. Here you see an example on the left. That's Lone Depot Park, the Marlin Stadium there. On the right, you can see a more typical application for a single ply. Now, you can attached either way. It doesn't actually matter. They're mechanically attached or fully adhered as well. And my favorite when you have to mechanically attach is the Rhino Bond. So that's what we call induction welding. You can see on the left, there's plates and fasteners that are installed, and you'll see they're actually gold plates. So those plates actually have the same material of the TPO manufactured on top of that plate. So then with the Rhino Bond system, once we've installed the membrane over that, we actually use the Rhino Bond induction welding to heat the material over that plate, then put one of those the pogo sticks with the whatever it's called on the right, the magnets on the right, and that will actually compress the material to the disc and actually create a weld so that you have every one of where you see those discs are on the left, that's an attachment point to the roof. So that's actually going to help with wind uplift as well. And I think it's a great product. When we are heating up the seams, you can see we use a product called the Robot. And then for any detail work, we're going to use basically a hand leister here, where we're actually going to hand weld wherever we need to. Now, I'm going to get up on my soapbox for a second and just explain why, in my opinion, the single ply roofing systems reign supreme. And of course, the caveat to all of this is we want to install what is best for the building. And sometimes a single ply roof system is not the best what's for your building. But more often than not, I think it's going to perform better over the course of its lifespan. The price that you pay for a roof on the front end is not the total cost of your roof. You have to think about the maintenance and the preventative maintenance and whatever work is going to be required throughout the entire lifespan. A single ply roof is typically going to be cheaper than a modified bitumen system. On top of that, you can install single ply over a flat application, and ponding water will not negatively affect the single ply roof the same way that it will affect a modified bitumen system. Typically, you're not going to get a manufacturer warranty for a modified system that is installed flat where you can for a single ply. On top of that, you're going to get a much more efficient roof. It is going to reflect a majority of that sunlight and heat, as opposed to the modified bitumen that's going to absorb that heat and create a less efficient building structure for you. And the SRI for these single ply options are much higher, meaning it's going to reflect that sun and that heat away. Now, I know that there are some people out there that say, well, it punctures a lot easier. I would argue that in most situations, whatever's going to puncture a single ply is most likely going to puncture a modified system as well. There are certain instances in which we can install different options that have different things, like a cover board for puncture resistance and uplift. So there's a lot of different options out there. And just one other quick advantage is typically the TPO rolls are 10 feet, whereas the modified bitumen are only 36 inches. So you're going to have 3 times less seams or areas where potentially leaks can get in as well, typically when you're using the single ply option. So I'll get off now, but yes, if you guys have more questions on this, I'd be happy to answer that as well.
Yes, I do have a bunch of questions that came in, if this is a good time.
Sure.
Please ask the roofer to discuss the pros and cons to warranty enhancements. For example, GAF silver or gold, 20+ year workmanship warranty, and what the single family owner must do to remain compliant.
So I'm going to separate that into 2 different answers. I think you have to, I would tell you that I don't know how much value you're going to get on that when it comes to a single family home. And I would also be very careful and understand what it is you're buying when it comes to for a flat roof. There are, like, because of insurance right now and the consolidation in the market and the way that they have all the leverage when it comes to when they will renew, what they will accept. Most of these companies are saying at 20 years, I don't care that you have a 30-year system. I don't care that you've spent all this money and that your roof looks pristine. It's been 20 years, put a new roof on or we're going to drop you. Now, you might be able to go somewhere else, or you might be self-insured to where that's not an issue, in which case I would say, absolutely, it can. If you're doing proactive maintenance and you can maintain that warranty 25, 30 years, it's a great option. As far as the single family homes, if you're doing like a shingle install or something like that, I really don't know how much value that's going to provide, because typically those warranties, and it's very important to read what is included with those, but it's typically going to cover like a manufacturer defect and stuff like that. And I typically don't see very often that being the main cause or the problem of a roof failure, in which case they may be able to wiggle their way out of in most instances.
Great, thank you. Next question? What is the approximate life of a roof you recommend to replace an old roof in a multi-condo building that requires getting upgraded to code? The building was built in the 70s. We have had some upgrades over the years. Most are flat now.
Well, I would say it would be prudent for sure to, and this is where I get to do some self-promoting, to have one of my forensic roof specialists actually come out and do a free roof audit on your building. And that would include us doing a comprehensive roof inspection, and in some cases taking a core sample and understanding where it's at in its lifespan. We'll get, I think that later in the show here, it actually shows you what our internal grading system is. All of it is always going to be predicated on what is going on with your insurance. So if you're in good standing, there might be an instance in which case you don't need to replace it until 20 plus years. A large component, I would say, to answering that question is, are you doing proactive maintenance? Do you have an established relationship with a roofer? If you do not, and you defer your maintenance, you will most certainly be replacing your roof sooner than you have to. And depending on the other components of that, whether you have lightweight or tapered insulation, it could cost you substantially more as well. So I think the first step is to get an assessment done by someone like us, and we can help determine that, understand where you're at, and if you're in good standing with your insurance company. And from there, we can help shepherd you towards that replacement, while, if possible, trying to help extend that roof's lifespan as much as possible.
Great. Next question. On a high-rise, high-traffic roof, would a single-ply roof be more durable than a modified bitumen?
So there's a couple things to that. For one, I implore every property manager that's out there listening. I know it's not always a situation that you can say, hey, the whole community is going to use one AC company or one trade from, and everyone can't hire their own individual, but lock that roof door. Make sure that someone has to sign in somewhere so that you know on what day who is going up on that roof and doing the work. If damage occurs from another trade, then we can obviously document that, back charge as needed. But it would depend, I think, on the amount of penetrations and air conditioning units on that roof, and whether or not there is slope there. If you are concerned about that, a multi-ply modified bitumen might be better. But I would still have to see the particulars on that to say that I would go one way or the other. But once again, I am somewhat partial to the single ply, and there are things that we can do to the single ply, like adding a cover board for puncture resistance and adding walk pads to get people to walk in specific locations that can help with that foot traffic.
Great. And that leads to the next question. Please ask the speaker to discuss and display wood decking for a steep slope roof and how important the condition of the attic is for warranty issues.
Yeah, I mean, we're always going to try to do an assessment, especially if we are coming out there to do an assessment and we have and can get attic access. To me, that's actually one of the most important components of the inspection, because for, let's say, a tile roof system, there's not much I'm going to be able to tell from inspecting the top side of your tile. That's the armor. That's what protects the waterproofing underlayment, which is actually the material that actually keeps your building watertight and keeps the elements out, right? So there's not as much I can always tell from the top side other than broken, cracked tile, And of course, there's value to that, but truly getting inside your attic, understanding if there are any leaks, you'll typically be able to see where that water intrusion is. I can then also do an inspection and determine the existing conditions of your deck and the structural joists as well, whether there might be any exposure for the client to needing some deck replacement. If the deck is beyond repair and from a structural standpoint needing to be replaced, there's so much I can tell from getting underneath and getting in there that I'm always going to try to. But that's, of course, the caveat of sometimes these crawl spaces are very small. Sometimes there's not always attic access. But attic access is very important because we also want to diagnose what type of decking is underneath there. Is it plywood? Is it a tongue and groove situation? Is it like a 2x8, dade pine as well? Something like that. We want to know that before we go into a replacement, so we can also tell you if there are going to be any requirements for deck replacement, what it is, how much it's going to be, and we can build that into the cost of the replacement on the front end.
Excellent. Next question. What is the new code in South Florida build-up roof where the roof is full of air conditioning and wiring?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
What is the new code in South Florida build-up roof where the roof is full of air conditioners and wirings?
So as far as like if it's physically in the roof, because I've seen that in certain instances, it obviously needs to be raised above the roof. All mechanical, electrical work that is on the roof will need to be brought up to the current codes. So some of those things might be electrical lines that are running on the roof, pipes that are running on the roof, condensate lines. All of those will have to be at 8 inches or higher above the finished roof on a like code approved pipe support stand, typically with a sacrificial pad underneath that. The height of the AC stands, once again, is also predicated on whether it's a curb or the width of the existing AC. So we know that there's enough clearance to essentially work underneath it if required. Any of the other mechanical and electrical upgrades would probably be something that you're going to want to have that trade look at to determine if the lines need to be extended, because like if, for example, if we have to install a tapered insulation package, your existing roof system might be okay based on what the height of your ACs are. The fact that we're adding tapered insulation, that is going to raise the height of the finished roof. That will then reduce the amount of space underneath those ACs, in which case you might have to raise all the AC stands or certain ones in that situation. That is something that you would want to discuss on the front end, and that a professional roofing contractor should set the table for you and help you understand, so that you know if there's going to be an additional exposure on that mechanical electrical, because in certain cases it can seriously add up to the overall cost of what it's going to do to replace your roof.
And in question to go with the tapered insulation, when you have tapered insulation roofing system over the wood decking, is there a problem for AC people going on the roof for service, etc.?
So typically over a wood deck, like I said, we're going to have to do that Class A fire rating, which would include installing most systems would be a tapered insulation package with a cover board, whether it be a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, and then mechanically attached to the deck. So once again, as long as you have the correct height from finished roof per code, which typically will become an issue if not discussed and planned for on the front end. But as far as foot traffic and stuff, that shouldn't be an issue as long as you're able to get to the required height.
Next question. What maintenance is needed and what is the maintenance schedule for a flat, large, long condo roofing that was newly installed?
So just like any kind of depreciating asset, on the front end, you should have to do theoretically less maintenance than you will towards the end of its life, right? Depending on the company that you do the work with and the installer's warranty that you get from whoever installed the roof, Proactive maintenance, I'm a huge proponent of. I think that it's important. Different companies can provide you with their maintenance programs. Some of them could be, one time a year. Some of them could be multiple times a year. It just depends on what and who you're working with. And then there's other ones that can tailor it specific to your building. But typically the more visits per year, it's going to, have a higher cost associated with that.
There's a question of, will the recording of this class, in addition to the slides, be provided so that those in attendance can share with other board members?
The slides I do not believe will be available. I believe this class is being recorded and it will be sent out, and Peggy should have that once everything's done.
Yes, just the recording today. If you want the slides, contact Diana and she'll be on the sponsor sheet.
And then there's just a comment from someone that says, for insurance purposes, there are special specifications that the carriers are asking for. Some things they just would not accept anymore. It's crucial to speak to your insurance agent before deciding the roof system you are getting. If you are approved for a state grant, you would also need to follow those requirements. And one last question before I turn it back to you. Our condo has a flat concrete roof that was covered with ISO and annually maintained with a hydro stop product. Have you had any issues with insurance concerns about roof age?
Yeah, I mean, take the specific system out of it for a second. I've seen a lot of issues come up over specifically the last couple years, and part of that is due to the Champlain Towers collapse. It's just gone. The pendulum has swung in the other direction, and I would say it's gotten very conservative. I don't disagree with the comment about understanding where you stand with your insurance company and making sure that whatever you plan on doing is something that they will cover. But yeah, I mean, in all these different instances, the first thing you should do is make sure you're in good standing with them before you ever choose to make a large roofing project decision.
And one more just came in. On a pitch tile roof, can the tiles be attached using a hybrid system? One screw, one part foam. There will be 2 screws on the first row edges and other specified areas.
I believe so. It's also, yeah, it's usually like the first row, third, and every fifth or something after that. There are specifications. I know this is also statewide, so it's not. We down here in Broward and Dade County specifically are in the HVHZ, the high velocity hurricane zone. So the codes here are a little bit different and a little bit more stringent than they are in certain areas. Depending on the pitch of the roof, the height of the roof would determine whether or not you could just use a foam, or if you would also be required to mechanically fasten either with 1 or 2 screws. So to answer that question, yes, of course, there are hybrid systems in place. That's probably going to depend on a few things and the municipality that you're in.
Great. Now your slides are showing, but you're not showing anymore. So don't know if you turned your camera off on purpose. There you are. So
I'm here.
Go ahead. Foam roofing systems. Thank you.
So no problem. So I'm going to try to move a little bit quicker because I know we're getting low on time and we still got a decent amount of slides. So foaming roof systems, we see these down here in South Florida. They're not a great option for the subtropical environment, and that is because they require a lot of attention. They require a lot of they typically cannot handle moisture very well. You can see what they can look like after 2 years, 4 years, and even 6 years. And that is due to, once they've been compromised, they break down fairly quickly. They're sold here because they do have a very high uplift ratio, but the maintenance and attention required to actually keep them in a, I would say, a non-compromised state is very difficult. So I'd be very wary about having these installed, especially down here in South Florida. So metal roofs are another thing that we do very well. There's 5V crimp, standing seam as well. Here you can kind of see the project of us installing it. You have your 30-pound and this is under the old code, so you can see the underlayment being installed there, and then also the metal once it's installed coming up. But I'm just going to keep moving for the sake of time here. You can see here, this is also an overview of a modified bitumen system, but also metal roof systems that we installed on the pitched sections of this building. Testing codes and insurance. So fire testing, this wind uplift test that you see here, that's what all the NOAs, that's how they are tested prior to them being accepted and then being allowed to be used. The NOA is basically a notice of acceptance saying this system has been tested by a third-party engineer in a lab and will basically handle up to this pressure, right? If you go and follow this exact system, it is already pre-approved and you can use this on a roof. Bell chamber test is essentially the same concept, but out in the field. And I would say typically these are usually not going to withstand or hold up as well as they do in the lab because those are more ideal settings. More ideal settings. This is actually out in the real world. Moisture survey. I'm a big fan of moisture surveys. I think it's a great opportunity. It's done by a third-party engineering company. Typically, it's going to scan the roof through we use the nuclear testing, and that is where they're actually scanning the roof for the hydrogen molecule to see if there is moisture in those roof systems. If there's above the allowable threshold, it's going to show blue, and that might be a situation which it's also going to help indicate what might be allowing that water to get in. If you're a property manager and you know the roof is in rough shape and the board is considering trying to kick the can down the road, this is a great tool to help illuminate currently where its lifespan is at and if it's compromised. And the reason that's important is not only is the roof meant to help keep the elements out of the building, it's also very important to make sure that in a high wind event that roof actually stays connected to the building. And if there is moisture in the roof, that system is probably compromised and you have a much less likelihood that it will stay attached if you do have a high wind event. Adhesion test typically refers to like a silicone or a coating application and making sure that we do a small test area to make sure that it's properly attached and will stick to the existing substrate before we go ahead and coat the entire roof. And there you go. So Senate 4D, here you see the Champlain Towers. This is what happened down in Surfside. You see the area highlighted and the area that collapsed. I would like to think that a majority of you property managers at this point know plenty about the deadlines that are included and the visual inspection from phase 1, and hopefully have already gotten through the phase 2 testing. Because I believe the deadline for a majority of this was January 1st of 2025. So there's a lot to kind of chew on here. For sake of time, I'm going to keep moving on, but it's very important if you do not know about this type of stuff to make sure that you acquaint yourself. And if the building that you're working with has dragged their feet on this, make sure that they get the SIRS study, the Structural Integrity Reserve Study, done as soon as possible. That's going to need to be done by a licensed architect or engineer. And we can help provide some budgeting prices on that. And that is because as part of it before, and what is required now is all 11 of these need to be determined as far as what the lifespan is and what the numbers are going to be required based on. So if the roof is going to be $500,000 and needs to be replaced in 5 years, then the building is going to have to basically stash $100,000 for every year for the next 5 years. So when that roof does come due, they are fully funded and prepared to actually replace it rather than continue to kick the can down the road, which is part of the issue with what happened down there and what we're seeing is causing a big consolidation in the market as far as the servicing of roofs versus the replacement of roofs, which is booming. So 2D is actually in relation to residential or single family homes. And that's more of the fact that some of these insurance companies were leveraging people and even calling us at 12 or 13 years to say, hey, they're about to drop me. My roof needs to be replaced. Can you give me a number? And they basically put legislation to say, it has to be at least 15 years. And after that, a company like us or another licensed and insured roofing company can come out there and tell you that you have at least 5 years or more left on that roof, which might be able to help extend that. And there's some of the stuff here about the distances and what the time of first inspection, instead of a 40-year, now it starts at 25 years if you're within 3 miles of the coast, 30 years if you're 3 miles or further. The cities and local municipalities actually will, their bylaws are going to come first prior to the state. So you might have to check with your local municipalities compared to actually what the FBC is and kind of what's going on with the whole state. So here's what I was talking about with our internal grading system. This is typically how we would grade a roof and determine where it's at in its lifespan. A is 15 plus years, B 10 to 14, C 5 to 9. D is really your last chance to try to extend it, which can be a little bit of a tough it's just tough at this point because of what's happening with the insurance companies. But that's your last chance to really do a recovery or a resurfacing or a coating if applicable, because once you get to the F phase of the roof, it's time to replace. So forensic roof audit, this is what we'll do if we come out to a property or what you can have a company locally do. And this is a report I put together where we're going to come out and determine what the core sample of the roof looks like, determine any deficiencies that are on the roof, highlight those in photos. And you'll see in the top right corner, actually highlight where those would be on the roof. We're going to give you kind of like a general condition summary, recommendations of actually what we think, the estimated repair cost, which is provided for you, and just an estimated budget with what we think the lifespan would be left on the roof. You can see all that here. So our service fleet, you can see here, these are basically what our service trucks look like. And we have all the material in there to basically make repairs as needed. And they're basically all the same, fitted out the same way so that there's continuity amongst the fleet. So a recovery is a great option. It's something that I would recommend. We typically only do these over a metal or steel deck. And that is because you have to fasten through your existing roof into the new deck. And the beauty of this is we don't have to tear the old roof off. We can basically put a cover board, as you see there, and a new membrane above that, and you get the same exact warranty that you would for completely replacing the roof. And it's going to be at, I wouldn't say a fraction, but certainly less than a complete replacement, because there is no tear off required and the removal of all that material. So I'm going to skip this actually, well, let me see here. Yeah, I'm going to skip that for now. The flat roof resurfacing. This is where we're basically going to add an additional layer of membrane over the existing roof. This is where you definitely have to be careful, because under a permit, this is what would go in as a repair. It is not a replacement, but depending on your individual circumstance, it could be a great option for you, because we can add a new layer of membrane over the top and it can look like this once it's done. So this is basically us doing a coating application, a silicone. So you see here on the left, we're prepping and priming and basically getting all the laps, installing the roof, and that's what it looks like once it's installing the coating, excuse me, and that's what it looks like once it's done. So it looks great. In certain applications, it's a great idea. Just be very conservative and wary about when the right time to do this would be, and make sure you've checked all your boxes on the front end to make sure that this is a good investment for you. So here's a couple roof systems we've actually done and replaced: larger communities, high rises, large kind of like industrial. 3 R's of roofing, which we talked about: the repairing, the restoring, and the replacing, right? A couple of things that we talked about today. And ladies and gentlemen, that is what I got for you. Please, if you can, take a photo of that. Please leave a review, any comments. But if you do have additional questions, I am free and got some time for you.
Great, Jordan. I do have some questions in the
Sure.
Q&A for you. Regarding hurricanes and storms, what would you recommend most? A metal roof or a tile roof for a single family home, 1 or 2 floors?
There is a couple different options there that I think would probably sway one way or the other. The uplift is going to be, well, it depends on the metal system, honestly, because you can have a 5V crimp, which is going to give you more fastening and attachment points rather than like a standing seam. At this point, I might honestly go tile, because you have that protective layer, and with the new codes of having us to put directly to the deck the waterproofing underlayment, you might have a better shot at withstanding that. But I don't know if there's maybe a more optimal system. I think it would depend on the type of system installed, when it was installed, what type of storm, and from what direction you're actually having it interact with your house or your building.
Great. Next question. Is the foam used to install tile deteriorate the same as what you showed for foam roofs?
As far as like the chemical makeup, I couldn't tell you what the difference is, but they are, I would say, fairly similar. Most of those spray foam roof applications, which I don't have as much experience with, but I know a majority of them have a materials, typically like a silicone, placed over the top to try to help slow the deterioration down. I could also tell you all of that stuff is going to deteriorate over time, and down here in the subtropical environment of South Florida, it's going to happen even quicker.
You've got lots of people saying what a great class, great presentation, very interesting. I have one individual that said that the QR code didn't work, that it gave them an error code, but that only one person. Everything is accolades about what a great class, great presenter, everything.
Thank you. Yeah, try again, just see if it works and let us know. You could always go to the website too, or shoot me or Diana an email, anything like that too. And through those methods, you can get in touch with us if you have any additional questions. I'm always here to help. I love to speak and educate, and honestly, a more informed consumer is a better consumer, and that goes for every facet of what would be involved in a building, not only the roof, but from an insurance perspective, painting, just all the different points of contact. So if there's anything that we can do for you, please let us know, and I'll bring Diana back in for a sec.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being part of our class today. Thank you, Peggy, and everyone for connect. I hope to see you soon in another class. Appreciate the time. And again, if you have any questions, my information is going to be in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to answer them after. Back to you, Peggy.
Okay. I also want to thank everyone, the sponsors, the managers, the board members, and especially Jordan. Outstanding job. Thank you, audience, for all your kind words. He did do an outstanding job. Very good presentation with the slides. So I'll be sending out the recording and the sponsor sheet of everyone as soon as I get the recording. And if you have any questions at all, please email Diana directly. Her email will be on the sponsor sheet. Just to give you an update on a couple of things coming up. Next week, I have a nice event in Palm Beach County. It's the June 12th President's Club, and the topic is disaster awareness. We have the director of the Palm Beach County Emergency Management Team coming to do a presentation, and we've got some nice sponsors, a mini expo, plated lunch, full gambit, and door prizes. So I hope those in the South Florida area, if you want to come, you're welcome to come. Following that, the week following, June 19th, I have Benjamin Moore coming in. They're a national manufacturer of paint. The guy giving the presentation is Rudy Forehand. He gives an outstanding presentation. and helps with your maintenance ideas of what you need to maintain the exterior of your building. And then the week following, we have unlimited restoration coming in to talking about towering above your problems. So they, again, restoration ties in with your hurricane preparedness and things like that. And I just want to mention that's the end of June. I may have a couple more coming, they're pending, but I want to mention that on July 10th, I'm going to be having a Spanish speaking presentation by Karen's Engineering. So we don't have an exact title. We're trying to work through that, but we're going to try to have once a month a Spanish speaking webinar, CEU credit as well. So thank you, everyone. I look forward to hearing from all of you again on the next webinar. Thank you, Vinteum, one more time, the Vinteum team, and enjoy your week. Thank you.